So I had a bunch of topics and I asked Rob a lot of different things about what I should talk about. And I kept bothering him and he kept giving me information about what all the attendees have said and what's top of mind for them, etc. And I decided a while ago to write about content marketing or killer content marketing, and I've deliberately striked out the content part and then also striked out most of my slides on content marketing. So you just get to hear whatever I want to say for another 39 minutes or so. Anyways, what I've done is I've actually posted this online already. I've already tweeted it out. And so you guys have access to it. You can follow along. There's lots of links in there to other things. So this is more of a guide. And what I'm going to say is probably going to be much more depth than what's on there. I also don't have 190 slides. I was trying to hold the record of the most number of slides. I have about 79. And mine are probably more dense than Dave's. But anyways, I'm going to get started. The big thing I want to say before I do get started, though, is that the reason I crossed off content is because when everyone thinks of content marketing, they think of a blog, and that's a misconception. I think what we should be all focusing on is actually killer marketing, and I'll define that a little bit more, give a bunch of examples, and we can go from there. First up, I do want to take something Jason said, which is what I call the goal. So the goal is, for everyone here, is basically a recurring revenue cash machine, for lack of a better term. A lot of people are consultants here. I used to be one. Totally get it. But the end goal for everybody, whether you're a consultant or already doing this, is a recurring cash machine. I thought this was basically a good way to start off and literally talk about what all of our goals are. So does anyone disagree with this, for starters? All right. We're doing good so far. So this is my username or whatever on Twitter. That's the hashtag, which I know all of you know. Someone made a joke yesterday about trying to get it to trend while I talk, which I don't think is possible. But I'll take about 30 seconds to let you guys tweet. So maybe it can trend in Vegas. Just kidding. The big thing I want to say before I continue, though, is the reason my slides are dense and the reason I'm going to share a lot of stuff is because all the information you've already heard, I could repeat and probably provide even more value to in some cases and some not. Like I don't know enough about SEO anymore, although I ran a SEO company for a while. But the big thing is nothing like this existed when I started. And I started in about 2003 on the internet. And that's why I keep coming back. And that's why I love talking to all of you as much as possible, because I really wish something like this existed when I started. And let me define a little bit more what something like this means to me. So this is a conference for people who are trying to create something literally out of nothing, whose focus is not on raising money or scaling a business by someone else giving you money. Instead, you're making a business as you grow, for the majority of you, from what I can tell. And there's no other conference that I know that is actually specifically designed for that case, that's been around long enough so that there are actually attendees here, which I'm going to talk about as well, that have been successful doing that. And that to me is the future. So all of you, all of us, are the future of business, which is basically starting things out of nothing with nobody's money except our own, and our own sort of blood, sweat, tears, whatever you want to call it. So a little bit more about me. I have a unique experience where I have run a consulting company like many of you, which is not in the slides, that did SEO and social media marketing. We got into design and stuff like that. I started that company in 2003 and kept going and decided that we decided we wanted to build products. We tried building lots of different products in lots of different ways, hired many designers, developers, because we were making money in our consulting company. And Dave can tell you how profitable SEO and stuff like that is. And so we ended up getting lucky with a business called Crazy Egg, which I know many of you have used or heard of or whatever. The thing is, it's self-funded and it's very profitable. There's only 3 full-time employees, 2 full-time and 2 that are half-time, but they don't work on anything else. And the rest are either contractors or freelancers or whatever it is that we need at any given time. And it's very profitable. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Whatever metric you have on employee profitability, we probably are number 1 on that. And that's what our goal is. So I think there's 2 different goals that you can have when you build a business pretty deliberately, which is hire a lot of people to make it bigger and bigger, or hire as little as possible people, full-time people, but still keep growing revenue as fast as you possibly can. In this business, we opted for that. In the next business, KISSmetrics, my co-founder and I are really into sort of learning things we know nothing about just by doing them. And people laugh when I say that for us, venture capital was an experiment, but it was because we wanted to learn how it felt. So I am sure Crazy Egg and anything else I did would be much bigger if we didn't decide to do KISSmetrics and take venture capital. We've raised, all of it's not announced, but we've raised over $6 million so far. This company started in 2008, so it's been about 5 years. At this point, we're about 35 employees, which for the amount we raised and how long it's been is actually kind of low, but there's a bunch of lessons learned there. But so my experience is a consulting company shifting to products, shifting to actually trying to raise money and grow a business by raising money, and still having a very profitable sort of software as a service business. We've done all kinds of stuff with that. But what I'm actually going to talk to you about first, because this came up in my conversations with a lot of you, not just about marketing, but more about how to take a product, which this product specifically is called KISSinsights. We don't own it anymore, but I'm going to tell the story of how we went from basically an idea to a product to a business to an acquisition. And I am 100% sure any of you in this room could build this product or business and either do the same thing with it or keep running it. The first thing that keeps ringing true for me that I put in all my slides is customer development. So how many of you know this book specifically? Okay, so about a third, 2/3, half, okay, half. How many of you are actually doing customer development? Okay, all right. How many of you are confident in your customer development and the methodology that you're doing it well? Okay, cool. I have met some of you, and I do believe that the 3 or 4 or whatever that raise their hands are actually good at it and very good at it. So to me, if you take anything away, I know there's been a lot of tips and tricks around tactics and even some strategy around pricing and marketing and all this crap. All good stuff, all important stuff. The one thing I'll tell you that's changed everything about how I do business is this. And this whole idea of customer development, of talking to your customers in the right ways. So the story of KISSinsights is very much oriented around customer development, how we learned what to build, the right thing to build, etc. I also have a lot more to talk about, so I'm going to keep going. The reason I like this is, to me, any feature, any product, any business, anything is all about finding the core problem. The core problem that a customer has, the thing that actually matters. So, I was speaking to an attendee, and he mentioned, I'm building X, and I think I have to do X, Y, Z, A, B, C for that to work. And all those things were features. So X was a feature, and all the other ones were features. And all I could say to him was, well, then you probably haven't figured out what this is, what the core problem is. What's that one thing that actually does matter that sort of helps you start and helps you evolve that thing? So this is really important. Next up, and I've got links down here to related stuff, is actually to find that core problem, you actually have to learn how to ask the right questions. There's, again, this link down here. When you go look at the deck, we'll kind of give you the answers on how to do customer development interviews, how to ask the right questions, how not to be biased about it. But if we're at the party today or anything and you guys have questions around that, I'm always happy to chat about that. This is very important, though, because if you ask questions in the wrong way, you get bad data, and bad data leads you in the wrong direction or helps just validate what you already know, which is not useful necessarily. So this is the process, and I'm going to talk about it in relation to KISSinsights. The process I always like to go through is starting with a hypothesis. Believe it or not, in my companies, everything starts like this as much as possible. If we're doing a new marketing channel, it starts with a hypothesis and assumptions of what it can do for us, and then we find the minimal way to figure out if that's true or not. We've got engineers in all of my companies and companies I try to be involved in actually doing customer development, thinking of things as hypotheses. So when people come to me with an idea, I actually try to help them break it down into some kind of hypothesis, because every idea is actually just some form of a guess, some form of an assumption that's not proven yet. The framework I like to use, especially for when you're thinking about a product, and this is what they call a problem hypothesis, would be our hypothesis is that a certain type of person have a problem doing a certain type of task. You can tweak it a little bit, but being very specific about this is very useful. And the one in orange is all about certain type of person. As specific as you can get would be very useful. What I mean by that is if you say, your person is a plumber and they have a problem managing appointments, I would tell you that, well, can you get more specific? Are you in a local area? Plumbers are local. Can you say plumbers in San Francisco or plumbers in Noe Valley in San Francisco have a problem scheduling? The only reason I say that is because then that helps define how you reach out to them. Another thing a lot of people ask me is, well, how do I find those customers? All you got to do is have that sort of drive to just go find them and be very specific about them. And that's the only secret to it. The rest of it is today we're in a world where we have so many different ways to reach a customer. That shouldn't be your big hang up. It should be more about defining who that customer is early on and really laying it out as a hypothesis versus any other way. And as I was saying before, we use this in different forms for all kinds of things, from marketing to sales to new channels we're trying to reach, partnerships, features, not just the whole product, everything. And it works really, really well at sort of breaking down the barriers of opinion, which is really what I think holds a lot of us up. So with KISSinsights, we started with something like this, which was our hypothesis is that product managers have a problem doing effective customer research. So that was a hypothesis. Then what we wanted to learn, and this is actually pretty standard for any software product, so you could probably take this and sort of frame it for whatever you're doing. What are they doing now? What are other tools missing? Who else is involved in the process of customer research? That was a really key one for our product. You'll see why later. How frequent, severe is a pain? It's back to getting to that core problem. Is this really the most painful thing for them? Is this really where it's solving for them? Or is it something where it's kind of important, but not the most important thing you could be doing for them? And the last one is what are other customer complaints? I had to reread that because I worded it weird. But essentially, that would help you if you are asking questions like that or trying to learn that. They'll help you figure out what the next thing to do is in case the problem you thought, the hypothesis you had was untrue and that wasn't the most painful thing. So how we learned is we did 20 phone interviews. We just reached out to product managers. I know there's been a lot of tactics shared of how to email, cold email, all that. We're covered there. So we did that. We did a bunch of paper user tests just by showing people stuff just to see if they could understand our verbiage and our language that we decided to use after the phone interviews. We did a few landing pages. I love collecting email addresses. You'll learn a little bit more about that possibly later. And then we did a hacky MVP just to test out the concept to see if it would work for us and for our customers, or a few handful of customers. What we did end up learning is that people aren't doing customer research. They want private feedback and targeting. So the way they were trying to do this today is things like user voice. And this was about 2010, 2011, so this is a while ago now. But that's what they were mainly using. And that it required developer involvement when they really wanted to do it in a private way, which is why we asked, like, well, who else is involved in your company in helping you accomplish that? And then the last thing we learned is it's a constant pain. So if they could do more, they would like to do more of it, but they can't. And it was a big holdup for them in their jobs. And this is product managers that are usually some form of a cost center in a company, large and small, and that always sort of unless they're really into the team and stuff like that, always butt heads with engineers on a daily basis. I don't mean to be that aggressive about it, but that's what I've noticed in general. And so it's a constant pain for them. They don't want to bother their engineers with yet another thing that has nothing to do with features on the product. So what we ended up building, which is kind of popular now, lots of other companies have done it, was this little micro surveys that pop up on your website. I won't get into that. You can look it up. I'll talk more about it in a second. So that was essentially all the way from a hypothesis to how we did the interviewing, what we learned, and all of that stuff. And there's a lot of links in there to help you kind of do it yourself. I would highly recommend that whether it's a feature or a new product or whatever you're doing, you actually take that approach versus just building it. This is one of my favorite quotes about marketing. This was actually from a couple days ago. My friend Patrick, who actually wrote that little blue book, ironically, said, how you get to the customer is as important, if not more, than what you get to the customer. And this goes back to why I crossed out the content part in the killer content marketing, because everybody thinks the way you get to the customer is with content. My belief today is that it's actually how you get to them relates to exactly like kind of what you provide them. And I'll give you an example with KISSinsights. One big thing, though, before I get into that is the reason everyone talks about marketing and it's so important to everybody is because channels are getting crowded very fast. So I know Jason came and talked about AdWords, and a lot of other people are using AdWords here, but one big thing that we've learned time and time again is that AdWords can be expensive, especially in crowded markets. And every market, if it's worth it, typically gets crowded over time. And what I mean by that is the cost goes up. So at some point, for Dropbox, who's a storage file sharing company, which is basically some of the first companies that started creeping up after e-commerce on the web, they had to pay about $230 to $388 just to acquire a customer for a $99 a year product. And so that just really didn't map out for them. I've got the presentation link in here and everything. So they actually couldn't acquire customers on AdWords. Some of you are lucky enough to be in markets where the costs are so low that you can still do it. That doesn't mean that'll last forever. And for a lot of us, it's impossible. Even for my business today, both of them, well, for Crazy Egg, AdWords still works, but for KISSmetrics, AdWords is almost impossible to make work at scale and keep growing the business that way. So what Dropbox did is they essentially equivalent of making their own channel. Everyone knows about their double referral. I'm sure everyone's got extra gigs and stuff like that because of it, but that's how they did it. They basically created their own channel. That's what I sort of referred to as this whole referral program and all that stuff that they did and that have sort of popularized that concept. Although it may not be right for you, so you don't necessarily need to implement it, but the whole idea is they made their own channel. They made their own path to reaching the customer. That's really what I mean by that. So I've got a simple 3 questions, which I actually talked about last year, but I think are still relevant and important. One is, who are your customers? So this is to figure out how to create your channel. Where do they hang out? Because if you don't know where they hang out, then you should go find out. And how should you engage them? And if you notice, where do they hang out and sort of who they are can actually start with your hypothesis, because you define in there who they are. And it's likely you have to go find them. So that already starts giving you an idea of where they hang out, give you the opportunity to even talk to them and learn about all this stuff even before you get into building a marketing channel, before you even build your product. So with KISSinsights, we had the same problem. AdWords, paid acquisition, all that stuff wasn't going to be scalable and workable for us. So this was the hypothesis, who the customers are. Where do they hang out? And that was an interesting insight as we started talking to them. What we realized, which is probably obvious to many of you who probably are some level of a product manager, is that they actually hang out on other people's websites. And does anyone know why they do that? It's pretty obvious, but they're a product manager. They're trying to improve their own product, so they go try other people's products. So that was the insight that we got, and we got that insight by actually talking to them. And as a result of that, we deliberately made the product in such a way where it sat on a website, and there was a little powered by KISSinsights link. And that was what I would call the marketing for KISSinsights. That was our channel. It was this little powered by link. I'm going to talk a little bit later a lot about channels. And the way we did it, because I know everyone likes to talk about metrics and me, because apparently I have a metrics analytics company, but we tracked it just by adding UTM codes, which are basically parameters. There's a link down there to help you figure that out. And then we actually got exact, let's screenshot of KISSmetrics, but like exact channel tracking. So we knew every single, if you go back and look, we wrote it as UTM campaign equals google.com, which is actually the site that the survey was sitting on. And what we did is we basically segmented our data by that campaign name, which was essentially every site the little survey sat on, and essentially figured out how many signups, what the conversion rate was, and what the revenue was from all those channels. And that's what we used to optimize who else we reached out to or did some manual stuff to get them to put our little thing on their sites or educate them about it. And that was the whole strategy for that business. We had over 25,000 signups before we actually ended up selling it. And it was profitable when we looked at it from how many people are working on it and what's our marketing cost, which was basically zero for maintaining it and things like that. And it was a $0 marketing budget, which is some of my favorite marketing budget. And we sold it, and it's now called Qualaroo. KISSinsights redirects there, and they've taken it to a whole nother place. The acquisition was a very healthy software as a service multiple, about 3 to 7x is kind of the range that I've seen work out really well. When you're doing less revenue, we were doing about 5 figures in revenue at the time, and we did all that basically for free. That's why I'm saying all of you guys could do this with no money and just engineering and design skills and some sort of thinking on marketing. It was a very good acquisition by all numbers. It was in the very high 6 figures, didn't hit 7 figures in the acquisition, but it was great. And the key to this is your marketing has to align with your customers. That's the most important takeaway I would have, even in most of my presentation about marketing. It's that it has to align with your customers. You can't go out and, you use things like stumble upon or, things that are irrelevant to your audience. But there are a lot of channels out there and a lot of more interesting ways to think about this type of stuff. So, going kind of into some examples of people that are in the room, not just my own examples, I wanted to talk about sort of another simple framework. And I also am trying to be highly tactical, so it is kind of dry, but oh well. Everyone else was very fun and exciting, and we're before lunch, so I can be kind of dry, I guess. I get the best spot. So the formula I came up with was essentially build, grow, and convert. And I can divide almost any marketing up into that. And this is very related to like basically how do you create an audience, how do you actually create your own marketing channels, and stuff like that. So Nathan Barry, raise your hand. He's somewhere in the room. We've mentioned him before. He's going to speak later, I think. He says, the more I help you, the more you will trust me. And I think that was he says a lot of things, and half of them are BS. I'm just kidding. I've been basically watching him for a long time, and you'll learn why in a second. But this is one of my favorite things that he's said sort of publicly, which is basically, which essentially exudes kind of how he thinks of marketing, in my opinion, and how he does things. So his model is basically he builds an audience by providing free content. He grows the audience by basically charging them for some content. And then he converts them now with a new SaaS tool that he's built. And he might build other ones and things like that, but that's kind of the model that I see for him. So, in combination of having a hypothesis, I would think through this kind of stuff, and I would also think through your marketing channels. Between those three things, you've got your almost the whole first year of your business pretty much covered. And that's why I, kind of want to talk about these three things. So with him, what he did is at nathanbarry.com, the way I first discovered him, I don't remember which exact blog post of his, but he has this very awesome way of providing really long, in-depth blog posts on topics that are very relevant to designers and essentially entrepreneurs like all of you. And so I bumped into his blog at some point, probably from Hacker News or something like that, because he's pretty popular on there in terms of getting traffic, or getting all his posts on there, and sort of ran into his blog. The way he grows the audience, like I said, he charges for content. So what he does is he basically has a bunch of stuff that he's created that he charges for that are targeting specific audiences. So this one was all about mobile app design. This other one was all about designing web apps. You can see there's some form of a theme for what he's doing. And then a new one he's doing is on authority, which I think is super interesting because everything he's done seems to be coming from some level of experience he had. And so he probably has a lot to say on it and can be an authority. So it's kind of interesting that he's writing on that, but I can see a pattern and a thread in how he does things. And the last is his new thing called ConvertKit, which I know has been mentioned a couple times, which is all about basically drip marketing and landing pages and sort of all that kind of stuff. Next up is Brennan. Brennan, you here? Right there. And this was a quote that he wrote, which is, write with the intention of appealing to a specific audience. If you guys have been paying attention to what I've been saying, that's essentially what I'm talking about. So I thought it was brilliant. And he did that on his podcast, which I don't think he's doing anymore, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, he is, kind of. Yeah, you got busy, I get it. And so with him, what he did and what I found interesting, and by the way, I love breaking this down. That's why I broke it down for these guys, and specifically what they're doing. I think this is all achievable by any of you, and that's really what gets to me about it. But basically, it was an email newsletter. It looks like an email newsletter, which I'll talk about. Then he does paid content as well, and then has a SaaS subscription model. But he really targets a specific audience across the board, which I find the smart thing to do. And you can tell he understands his audience, too, by the way he's doing it. So Freelancers Weekly is basically for freelancers, which I know some of you might be. Are any of you on his newsletter? Awesome. There you go. Yeah, so he's speaking to you guys. So that's kind of the email newsletter. I think has over 3,000 emails on it right now. I think that could be a lot more, by the way, but all good. And then he grows it, or he basically grows the audience by basically having them pay for something he's done. So this was all about doubling your freelancing rate. And he has a book, worksheets, and interviews, and he charges $49 for it. Has anyone paid for it? Awesome. See? We're doing good here. So this is working, obviously, because you guys are paying for it and all that kind of stuff. The next thing he did was one about basically how to get more clients from your website, which I think is a pretty awesome topic. Now, the pattern I saw in his work is that it's always targeting a specific audience. Has anyone bought this yet? Awesome. There you go. You have customers in the room. Have you talked to them? Awesome. All right. And so the pattern I saw is that it's always targeting freelancers, and it's hitting on problems and pains that they have, which is a pattern that I see of success for people that are doing this stuff. And last, he has planscope.io, which is essentially his version of building software for the same audience. Anybody using this? Why not? Dude, what's up? I mean, you got like these handful of people, they're rabid. All right, anyways. Everyone's got something to improve on, so I like giving them a hard time about that. I have apparently people tell me I have a special talent of poking on the right bruise and salt in the wounds. That's my job, apparently. Any of you that have talked to me probably noticed that. I like, the way I like to say it is, all I got is hate. So if you talk to me, just be warned that I don't mean bad. It's just everyone else loves you and says everything you're doing is awesome. Well, that's not really helpful to you. So I like to poke at kind of what hurts you and what will make you stronger, so to speak. So Ruben, I've known Ruben for a while now. I don't know if it was the first MicroConf or before that. Ruben, you're here, I'm assuming. Yes, back there. He's interesting because I've actually seen him all 3 years, right? Yeah. And what he says, and this is on his website that I think is kind of defunct now, when he was sort of his product website is like umbrella. He says, who has the time to learn every new piece of software they run into? Not me. I'm pretty sure you don't either. And that really hints on the simplicity and kind of the ideology that he has when he builds software, which I think is super interesting and appealing to me. And you can tell that he's taking that to heart when you look at kind of the next stuff. So the way he did it is actually different than Nathan and Brennan, probably because he's been doing it a little longer, and everyone should congratulate him because he was actually able to quit his job by the business he started, and I'm sure that was a big moment of joy for him and for me as well, because I just love people quitting their jobs and being able to sustain themselves on what they've built. So for his build, it was basically a free guide and a newsletter. And it's an interesting strategy, which I rarely see, which is he actually has a sample proposal option, and then it's a SaaS subscription. So I'll explain. So on his blog, and I'm sure in other ways, he actually promotes this free guide, and this is getting to be a more and more popular sort of trick, so to speak. And I'm sure he's got a whole bunch of people that have basically got the free guide, and it's all about how to create a perfect proposal, because his software is proposal software. And then what he does is, and this is where it gets interesting in my mind, on his homepage, if you're not going to sign up, he basically has a big offer of giving you a sample proposal, which is essentially like a mini demo of his product. And then what he does is, I know we've talked about email a lot, he actually breaks out this email that he's already actually updated, so I had to update this, and this is the updated one, but basically he sends you an email pretty much right away. He has a reminder of what kind of the product, what the email's about, and he also thanks you already for taking the time to check out the sample, which is always a brilliant line. I'm sure Miss Copy Hacker over there can kind of tell you the same thing. And then he's got a link, obviously, to check it out and download the PDF. And it's actually a pretty cool demo of what the product can do and kind of what it is. And it's literally the product. And then benefits of his product. And there's a whole bunch of awesome stuff he's done on learning what his website visitors are thinking when they come to the website using KISSinsights/Qualaroo, which I'm sure he can teach you all the tricks of. I think he does one of the best jobs of doing that. And one key thing in here that didn't exist in the previous version of this email was, so why is BidSketch better than using MS Word proposals? And before he just said, why is it better than using proposals or something like that? And the reason he specifically says MS Word, Microsoft Word, is because he learned from his website visitors that I think it was like 60-something% of them actually use Microsoft Word right now, today, to do proposals. And so he incorporated that into his marketing, which is another learn from your audience and all the stuff everyone's talked about. And then lastly, he has a CTA for sign up that goes right to the pricing page. I also, when I signed up for the sample proposal, I recommend all of you do because the flows are super cool and useful to learn from. He actually, right after you sign up, he drops you right into his pricing page. So I'm obviously curious how that converts, but that's pretty cool. And then so he sends you back to the pricing page. This is just his homepage. Thought I'd show it. He's also got a cool thing on the homepage that says, $193 million earned by BidSketch customers, which is awesome. It's a somewhat of a vanity metric, but it's also proof that this product might work for you. So I really like that. So if you can see the pattern here, it's all about teaching people how to solve their problems, and that's what all these folks have done one way or another. And that's really, to me, what content marketing is. One of the things that people always ask me about, rightfully so, I guess, is that, oh, you guys have built an awesome blog at KISSmetrics. How do I do that? And that's, again, what this talk's all about. Maybe you don't need to do that. That's probably not the thing you need to do. For us, what we learned is people that have a marketing mindset always want to learn about how to do it better. And there was also a lot of marketing content out there in lots of different places and lots of different blogs. So we saw an opportunity for SEO, for kind of social media and stuff like that to build a blog. But the secret for us is actually that it's not our blog that actually is the main thing. For us, the main thing is actually our Twitter account. How many of you follow our Twitter account at KISSmetrics? Yeah, all of you should follow it. And you should ask the people that follow it. They would tell you the same. But we were able to opportunistically grow our Twitter following before anyone figured out, or a lot of people figured out, that you need to share interesting stuff. So our Twitter feed is actually arguably somewhat more useful than our main blog, because 1 out of 10 tweets are our own, maybe a little bit more now. All the rest are other people's content. And that did so many things for us, it's not even funny. But we actually had the Twitter account first, which has over about 110,000 followers now. And then we created the blog, because then we knew we could drive traffic to our blog. We could have easily done white papers and other things, and we still could do those and drive traffic to those. So it was really this channel that we found that was an opportunity, and we created it. And now it's just keeps growing, and we don't even have to feed it too much. It just works. I still manage that account myself. So lastly, it's all about learning from your audience and your customers, and that's what this whole process is. So I'm going to do another plug for this in customer development, because not enough of you are doing it. Even the ones that are doing it don't feel 100% comfortable about doing it. But it's actually our secret weapon in all my businesses, especially when I can get our engineers to start doing it, which is actually easier than you think. Because the last thing any of you want that are engineers is to build something that nobody wants and waste all that time coding it. And this actually helps you not have to do that. The last thing is, if you actually have customers already, there's a whole bunch of questions you can ask them. I thought I'd share all of these. They're in the deck. I'm not going to go over them. These have also been very useful, just like with the kind of stuff Ruben's doing in understanding your customers, so that you can kind of feed what they need to hear, what they should hear, what problems you solve for them back to them. So I've got about 8 to 10 minutes left, most likely, and I'm going to go through probably the most interesting part of the presentation that is actually about marketing. This was actually a talk I gave at a conference called Unsexy, which was about B2B stuff, but there's a lot of venture-backed people in the room, so they liked it, but might not have been as relevant to them, because I guess they can spend money and stuff in different ways. And so this is lots of stuff about how to get distribution, not by content, but essentially by all kinds of different ways, including some of the examples I already gave. But very specifically not about content, because I think content is some of the most difficult thing to do, especially for engineers and the like. And it takes a lot more deeper understanding of your users. And any time you pour into sort of content that's like for marketing, you're not pouring into necessarily content for your website and conversions and improving those things, because those are really important things. So these are things that are not content that can help you actually grow. So the first category is integrations. And the big one there is it's all about other people's platforms. And there's a ton of them out there, all the way from mobile to other ones. And so I'll give some examples. I didn't do the cumulative count, but there's a ton of people you can reach. So this is a little bit of slide porn, but essentially all the different products that you can integrate with. And literally everyone in this room can probably find one of these to be relevant for them. And there's also at least 10 times more than this, the number of products that you can reach. Some of the notable ones are, I know Constant Contact's in the room. I updated my slide. I only had 500,000 users. Now they're at 550,000, which is awesome. And every one of these companies, I just updated the slide yesterday, have grown. So that means this is a growing opportunity. And there's a slight misconception about integrations that you turn them on and they just start making you money. It's not. I think these are very different than a partnership. Same problem with partnerships. You turn it on or you do it, and then all of a sudden you're making money. This is more about, the way I think about it is, how can you involve these products, these platforms in your product, in your business, so that it's better for the customer with it than without it. That's a better way that I would treat it, because then it's natural. And back to the customer development. If you're doing customer development, you'll essentially figure out what other things are using, what platforms are using, what tools are using, and then it kind of gets obvious as to what you should integrate with. So that's what I mean. They make your product better. I just talked about that. I think it's really important to have really good partner pages or integration pages so that people can find them. Back to the SEO stuff. And it's all about talking to your customers, stuff like that. This is all standard. This is another interesting one, which I don't see enough people using, but I think it's awesome. So if you're targeting B2B, I would actually target work emails. So what I mean by that is, like, if you go to podio.com, they essentially ask for your work email. They don't ask for your Gmail. They don't ask for any of that. They want your work email. Same with Yammer. Yammer sort of popularized this concept. There were other companies doing it before that. There's a lot of value you can get when you do this. So some of it is that you can essentially optimize your onboarding. So if you know that they're a work email and your tool's all about doing better work one way or another, you could basically make sure that you can analyze your user base, see if anyone else from the company is using your product. You can, if it's like a little bit of a social collaboration tool, you can follow other people in the company. And this also gives an obvious reason for you to ask them to invite their coworkers into the product, which is huge, especially if you have a per-seat model or something like that. Next up is embeds. I actually don't see enough people using this. This was very popular maybe 4 or 5 years ago. YouTube's the obvious one. SlideShare is another company that I actually was an advisor to and still am before they got acquired by LinkedIn. And the embed strategy, I learned a lot about it working with them. My slides are on SlideShare. So you really want to figure out why people should embed. I think SlideShare had figured out a lot of things around presenters like myself and the fact that I'm presenting and I should either embed or link to my slideshow. So they've sort of grown a lot of traffic that way. You want to make it as easy as possible to embed. There's a lot of different ways to do that. You want to track them well. So just like I was talking about tracking the Powered By link, you want to track which type of embeds, what sites they're sitting on, what type of sites they're sitting on, and how they convert into actual users and or paid signups, et cetera. You want to test call to actions in those embeds. And then lastly, you want to optimize for search by doing little anchor tag or links and stuff like that, but don't obsess. But Dave already talked all about that. So Powered By is obviously another one, which I've already talked about and gave you guys a pretty good case study on. The whole key is, what are you powering? And really figuring that out, if there is anything that you can power. Sometimes you can incorporate that right into the core of the product. So with KISSinsights, the fact that you had to sign up, put a JavaScript on your site, and you got these little pop-ups, and they were valuable to you, and they were also valuable to your visitors because they're able to communicate with you, was really huge. I see a lot of businesses that have Powered By end up growing a lot faster than ones that don't, that could. And so I would really think about that. And back, this is all the normal stuff about measuring effectiveness and all that kind of stuff related to that. And the last one, which I find super cool, I think the best case study here is Grader.com from HubSpot, which is all about free stuff. So basically, what free tools can you build that help start solving the problems you want to solve for your customers and get them sort of into your funnel. The next one is by New Relic. They did this new thing, which was really just like which type of apps have the fastest response time. And it's a little bit interactive. It was kind of a cool thing they did. I think they could take it further. But I thought it was really neat that they did that, and it's more free stuff. But it's actually more of taking your engineering time for marketing by building little free tools if you can't build it into your product. The key to, I think, a lot of this stuff is really about mapping the customer decision making and really figuring out what are the decisions customers need to make as they start buying your product. You should think about what you can repurpose it that already exists in your product. I think BidSketch is actually a pretty good example of that around the free sample proposal. It's all about educating. I think that's a key takeaway on marketing these days, which is like you're just teaching, you're educating. People want to learn. You want to teach them. You want to be the brand that teaches them. You sort of want to own that as much as possible. You want to test your ideas minimally just to make sure that you're not wasting any significant engineering time to see if it'll work. There's lots of different ways to do that. And obviously use it to measure and optimize your revenue. So I did it in 40 minutes. Wow. Go? Yeah? No? No? Yeah? Okay, cool. I mean, that's what the conference is about. It's all about like go. And this is one of the just before I end and go for questions because I'm sure I have enough time. One of the things I love about this conference is every year, and this was great after Jason's talk, and it puts a lot of pressure on the speakers, but it's awesome. Somebody tweets after the first talk, like, the conference is already paid for. That's like, you don't see that at any conference. Like any conference, this is the only conference I've been to where I get that you get that response in a tweet. So, I got to say that, like, for the organizers and just the fact that all of you are here, this is awesome. And, I'm looking forward to hearing more and more of you, hopefully in the future, speak at the conference and learn from what you guys are learning. Every time I come here, I learn more than anywhere else I can go for 2 days. So, kudos to everyone for being smart, talking about this stuff, and also trying to do stuff without money. I know Jason likes money a little bit, like from other people, but it's not a good thing, trust me. All right.
So you talked about using problem hypothesis.
Yeah.
Do you write those down and put them where you can see them, or you just talk about them out loud? How do you put those together?
Yeah, we always write them down, and we always take a deliberate approach to brainstorming. So we take a hypothesis, we write down what the riskiest assumptions are, or whatever assumptions we're making, and essentially the idea is what are the assumptions that would make this not viable. So, the cost of acquiring. So if my hypothesis is I can acquire 100 customers a day from AdWords, one risky assumption is the cost of acquiring from AdWords is too high, which means I can't acquire 100 with the budget I have. And so I would go use a keyword tool like Dave was looking at just to see pricing, right? So it's just a deliberate approach to kind of put more method to your mayhem. And I love things like that.
You talked about asking questions when you go and talk to your customers and how important that is. Can you see we have a little more time? Can you speak a little more about that?
Sure. So for me, I like to ask questions that essentially get the person I'm talking to tell me a story. And what I try to find is if I get stories from 20 people I've talked to, it's easier to find what that core problem is that they have. So for me, it's all about just asking questions that are not leading, that don't assume anything. I actually don't like asking most interviewees what problem they have, because that already makes them in this, what's your problem? Like that mode, right? So I always think of that sort of reaction or that question or that sort of anger out of that. So I try to more make it conversational. One way I think about it is you want to almost leave the interviewee in such a place where they felt really good about talking about themselves and they almost felt like they didn't learn anything about you. Because you don't want to teach them anything about you. It's not the point of saying, I got this awesome thing I'm building. Do you like it? That's the worst you can do, right? Because what this whole process is about is finding out their problems. In fact, even in the link I sent you, that's actually from our product manager at KISSmetrics, or now product manager. He wrote it before he was. He mixes in the interview the problem and understanding problems people have and his solution. And I actually don't recommend that. I like very specifically just getting stories out of people about themselves. Never talking about what I'm doing, except that, hey, I want to solve your not even problem, but I want to do things to make your life better. That's actually a better way to frame it. That's why I want to talk to you about what you do every day or every week or whatever it may be. So that's what I like to do. That's how I do it. I'm also lazy, so I'd rather just ask to get stories out of them. It's much easier.
Any more?
So when you're talking about the customer development and stuff that you do you typically build an email list first, get people that have expressed at least some sort of interest or synergy there, and then reach out to them? Or would you, when testing a product or problem hypothesis, would you just start cold calling people and trying to engage them in stories to get that information?
It depends. So these days, between my own personal brand, my co-founders, and the KISSmetrics account, and the Crazy Egg account, and all the emails we have, it's much easier to just push out an email, push out a tweet, and get a bunch of survey responses, and then use that to go have conversations. And usually, if the survey responses are designed well, it doesn't bias them. It more aligns them with the kind of things that you want to talk about, or the thing you want to talk about. So that's, I think, what I do now if I know I can drive free traffic or cheap traffic. If I can't do that, or if I'm doing something completely new and prefer sort of just reaching out, I'll reach out to people and just try to talk to them and ask them about, how, ask them to talk about what they do on a regular basis. And that's really the way I would do it. So I think it really just depends on where you are and what you're trying to do. And newer stuff, I actually like cold outreach better and just reaching out to them, no surveying, nothing like that.